All right, North-South Connection. We are here for the NoSo Post Show, Money in the Bank 2024. I'm your host, Ryan Gray. I'm here with Mike Rossi and Richie Mars. Mike, first, what is going on, buddy?
Not much, man. Good show, I thought.
Well, overall, yeah, very good shows we'll get into. And Richie, what is going on?
Nothing much. Like Rossi said, good show, fun show, and it seems to be a constant theme with all these PLEs WWE's been putting on. Fun vibe, fun atmosphere, just fun show overall.
Yeah, they have a pattern. They have an atmosphere. And it seems to be working for them. Not like us. Like, just say, fuck it, call it live. Is that what Sid said? We're live, pal, JR, whatever. So that's what we're doing here. Impromptu. So that is what it is. But, yeah, overall, very good show. Triple H has his cadence down for sure. And actually is the old NXT formula. 5 matches, bang, bang, bang. But with the PLEs, WWE style, those bang, bang, bangs have long interludes in between. And it seems like those were stretched out today big time. It seems like we have about 20 extra minutes of nothingness in between matches. So let's end the nothingness here and kind of get into the pay-per-view. All right, so our first match here, 16 minutes and 30 seconds. The men's Money in the Bank ladder match. LA Knight, Drew McIntyre, Carmelo Hayes, Andrade, Jey Uso, and Chad Gable. Richie, let's start with you here. Was Drew McIntyre winning this match the correct decision?
I mean, with Money in the Bank, we've always had, like, it's a very exciting time to see. It's like, oh, who's going to get the contract? You know, who's going to be, because with Money in the Bank, it's always like whoever gets the contract is the next guy. Now, did Drew McIntyre need Money in the Bank? No. But I would rather the Money in the Bank be used as a storytelling device than somebody haphazardly just carrying around a briefcase for months on end, losing, and then cashing in, and then it's like, all right, we're supposed to buy this guy as a champ. So I think it's a bit different to use the Money in the Bank, and I think everyone's kind of just used to the Money in the Bank giving somebody their first championship, but the reign after the fact doesn't really hit well. You know, it's more miss than hit, in my opinion. But with Drew McIntyre, I think it was a fine call. You know, what is it like going to change the landscape of WWE? No, but it's going to help further, probably, arguably, the hottest feud WWE has so far. So I thought it was fine. I know there are going to be people who are disappointed, but it is what it is.
Yeah, Rossi, I felt that there was no definite winner here. We have 2 strong champions. Well, excuse me. We're about to have 2 strong champions. In Cody Rhodes, we don't need him with a Money in the Bank flirting around him. And then Gunther is not, there's no need for that nonsense with Gunther, hopefully entering the fall. So I thought that that's why all along that I thought maybe Chad Gable for the IC, but they're kind of putting a hat on the hat with the heat, with the CM Punk and Drew McIntyre of it all. So I felt that why not put an extra hat onto that heat and just cook that thing up even more. I thought Punk was excellent. We'll get into that later. But overall, do you think it was the correct move to jump with Drew?
I do, because they had a story that they had in play, right? And I feel like last year, going back to the Priest win, I feel like they never really had an end game with that, right? It ended up working in their favor by doing the cash in at Mania. But if Punk doesn't get hurt, does that happen? You know what I mean? So I feel like they gave it to Priest last year as a way to get Judgment Day over to a different level. And this year, we all knew that when Drew won, he was going to cash in tonight. And that's okay, because I think it added to that match. It added to the story. We'll get into that title match in a bit, but there's a lot of layers coming out of that title match now that they did that. And I don't really feel like there was anybody else in that Money in the Bank match that the story would have made a lot more sense with, you know?
Yeah, so Drew McIntyre is just completely blinded with annoyance, blinded with rage, blinded with, eagerness to get that title back, and really blinded by CM Punk and him announcing to close Monday Night Raw that he is going to win the Money in the Bank and cash in that night. Pretty much put a bat signal out for CM Punk to crash the party. So, this Drew McIntyre character right now is on fire. But he's not really the brightest, Richie. I feel like he needs guidance. What's your thought on, in retrospect now, him calling a shot from kayfabe aspect? him calling his shot to close Monday Night Raw, him winning it, and pretty much inviting CM Punk to ruin the party.
I mean, he's coming off a natural high in storyline. When you beat up the guy who cost you the world championship in your hometown, and then you beat him up to a bloody pulp in his hometown, you think, wipe my hands clean. Finally, he's gone. Took the bracelet off Punk's wrist. That is the exclamation point, which is how a bad guy does. He does the twirling of the mustache, being like, "Aha, this is my shot. I'm going to call my shot right here, right now." And I think that was a decent hook into Money in the Bank for getting people to tune in, so I understand that aspect of it. But with Drew McIntyre, it's the overconfidence is the story. He's been screwed over by this briefcase twice now. And now he's the one who actually has this power, but he's abusing this power by calling his shot and calling it a little bit too early because he could have waited for the match to end. We're going to talk about the unfortunate production snafu that happened. But what you do here is, like, boom, you change the formula. He got cashed in on, lost, cashed in on, lost. Now he's the one who could cash in on. He has that power, abuses it, and that comes and bites him in the end, which is very good storytelling and a neat little twist on the formula of the Money in the Bank briefcase.
Yeah, we can close with Drew with that world title match. Rossi, I thought the quality of this Money in the Bank match was extremely smooth. I thought it was laid out great. 16 minutes and 30 seconds is probably the ample time for a Money in the Bank match. Just enough car crash, just enough time to set up bullshit, just enough action, just enough, I guess, time for psychology for people to kind of start getting eliminated as they do in the Money in the Bank. Enough drama, enough suspense, all that stuff. So, yeah, I thought the main event, I thought the kind of low-P MVP in this match was Chad Gable from a overall aspect. I thought Andrade worked extremely hard. I thought Carmelo shined really hard and worked hard. Jay and LA Knight felt like big stars. And really, Drew was the smartest one in there. So, yeah, even, what is this? This got to be our least 35th Money in the Bank match, right? I think that's a pretty safe number to say. And, they still had a bunch of innovative and fresh and memorable spots. And I think this was probably the best Money in the Bank in kind of a long time, Rossi. Maybe perhaps since, I don't know, Brock winning at 19 in Hartford. That was the last one that kind of sticks out to me as a wow, that was fucking awesome. And that was brutal. And that was brutal. I kind of got that here.
What I will say about that, Ryan, is who was in that match in 2019?
Andrade and Drew.
That's all you need to say. That's all you need to say. That's all you need to say. He whipped out that powerbomb on Carmelo just like he did with Finn in 2019. Yep. You kind of knew that was a hot spot. Andrade is the type of worker that shines in a match like this because he's not going to win, but he's going to do something stupid that kind of excels the match a little bit, right? Yeah. And when you look at this match, it really was a tale of six guys, right? 3 quote unquote top guys, and Drew, Knight, and Jay, and then Gable, Andrade, and Carmelo, who are just solid workers, right? So I think that the way that they pieced this match together was excellent. And if you look at the Money in the Bank format, since they've made it its own pay-per-view, this has to be one of the shorter ones. The old Money in the Banks on WrestleManias were all in the 15 to 18 minute range. But it was one of those matches that I feel like would have probably gotten worse if it got longer because they heat spotted it out right from the beginning and they had it planned in place. It all worked. The mystery at the end wasn't really as strong as it was with the women's match, which we'll talk about later. But at the end of the day, they still hooked you late. And, the finish kind of came out of nowhere, which I think worked at the end. And I think 16 minutes of this match worked out when in some years you might feel like it was short. This year, they hit the hot spots early. It was a great show opener. The crowd was with it from beginning to end. And I think what hurts Money in the Banks sometimes is they go too long. You don't have to worry about that here.
Yeah, I can't figure out my favorite spot in this match. If it's, I think, honestly, low-key, it might be Chad Gable picking up the ladder and suplexing it onto someone. Or if it was Chad Gable kind of hanging, doing the Jeff Hardy spot, swinging around. But I really think my favorite was the finish when Drew, lawn darted the ladder to Jey Uso's face like a fucking spear, and he was on Braveheart or whatever. I thought that was super fun and innovative. Richie, before we jump off this match, do you have a favorite spot or action in this match?
Yeah, going back to Andrade, I had my buddy here, and we were looking, and Carmelo was trying to do a springboard. Andrade comes up, looks like a Russian leg sweep, but they both do a backflip, and they both face plant onto a ladder. That was a innovative spot I haven't seen before, and it just looked brutal. Chad Gable German suplexing the ladder was also pretty creative.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, Ryan, Chad Gable being the MVP of this match, and he really was the glue that kind of tied this match together. You had the electric spots with Jay and Knight, and then you had Drew always kind of like poking his head out and like picking his spots. And then you had like the workers in Mello and Andrade just trying to be as high flying and exciting as possible in order to get those pops from the crowd. So very solid Money in the Bank match. And yeah, overall, I think the right person won. And you just kind of tell that story later in the night.
Yeah, to put a bow on it, I just feel like there was, to what I said earlier, there was no real definitive, we don't really need it to be a distraction, so to speak, right? For the men's title here. So this, in retrospect, it really was, even though it was a little silly and goofy, to be real, I thought it was a good way to get it off it. And for Andrade, this really is the best match for him because not all the attention is on him, so he can work his high spots and then he can fall in the background and lose before everyone else falls asleep watching him. All right, anyways, the Intercontinental Championship match, 13 minutes and 15 seconds. Sami Zayn, Braun Breaker. Rossi, to you, overall, I thought this match was a very good contest between a veteran and a rising star.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised with the fact that Sami beat him clean, but I think that works in the story of the match, and I think it made Braun look like he's close to getting to that level, but he's not quite there yet, and I think that's beneficial to him because, look, this guy's still green, right? Like, he's shown a lot of promise, and his main roster run has been excellent so far, but Sami Zayn's the guy that beat Gunther, so I didn't feel like taking the title off of him at this point made a lot of sense. And Braun didn't look bad in this defeat. Like, he had the match won at times, but Sami was just, the better worker tonight. He was the guy that outsmarted him. He was the guy that got the victory. And at the end of the day, I think that this probably is not their first match. I'm sorry, not their last match. So I thought it was really good that they were able to piece this one together the way that they did. And I don't think Braun comes out of this match looking bad. You know what I mean? He lost to a guy that, wasn't, a year and a half ago was in the world title picture, right? So it's not like he lost to a scrub. You know what I mean? So I think Braun's going to grow from this. He has the first, big, PLE title match under his belt. And, he didn't look bad throughout. So at the end of the day, I liked the match a lot. I was surprised at the finish because, Brian, we talked about on our preview earlier, might have been offline when we were talking about it. We thought maybe Braun slips on a banana peel. That's how he loses, but It wasn't that. And at the end of the day, I don't think that he looked bad coming out of this, and Sami looked great.
Well, Richie, in a way, he kind of did in a rookie aspect kind of lose, like his greenness got in his way because he's just kept he needs to slow down his attacks, from a kayfabe aspect. He needs to slow down his energy and focus on it. He can't go 1,000 miles per minute, or he's going to get caught like he did with Sami Zayn. We get a blue thunder bomb and a haluva kick, and then it was it. Really, he went for spear, missed him, haluva kick, and it was really over. I thought the structure was really good. I would say Braun took about 75 to 80% of the match, as he should, really. And yeah, he just needs to, from the kayfabe aspects, I guess he just needs to, what he can take from this is he needs to learn to slow down and kind of let the match come to him instead of him attacking the match, if that makes sense to you, Richie.
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense. I think with Braun, the evolution of his character, at least on the main roster, before I get to that, first things first, thank God they switched his theme up. Because
it's a pretty good theme too, by the way. Now,
I couldn't stand it. But his theme did remind me of "Here Comes the Pain," if you remember that game. But with Braun right now, this loss is very important in terms of, like, if you go in the story of Braun Breaker and his main roster career, he's steamrolling everybody, with raw, natural power. And to do all of that and be successful at that is cool. But where do you go from there after you beat somebody the same way for a championship? There's not much you could go from there. At least from this loss, you could build on that, where you have Braun, who is chaos, but now he's going to be learned into that controlled chaos aspect, where he's going to pick his spots. He's going to get smarter. And we even saw in Money in the Bank, because on Raw, he went shoulder first into the steel steps. But here, Money in the Bank, he stopped himself and caught himself. So he's adapting. He's learning in storyline in order to pick his spots. So I like the direction they're going with Braun. You don't need to give him the world right away. You could still build up to that and build that momentum. With Sammy, I think he really did need this win to solidify his Intercontinental Championship run. And who knows what happens at SummerSlam, if it's going to be Braun, if it's going to be a multi-man match with Sammy involved. Who knows? But I think Sammy winning is the right call. And Braun, you can still build up to that. Braun is the flavor of the month, as the kids would say. As he had bangers with Ludwig Kaiser, Sheamus, Ilya Dragunov, Ricochet, bunch of different guys. And he's hot. He's a hot commodity right now, where people are like, oh, he should be the winner of this match, because he's the hot ticket right now. But just because he's like the hot ticket, is that the right decision to go to? Because there are two ways you could go it. You could give him the championship right now, and then he could still do more of the same, where then eventually that turns cold because it's more of the same. Or you could have him lose, and then you could build off that lose and go that direction and see how he comes across in the next title opportunity against Sami Zayn. So I thought it was the right call.
Yeah, it was the right call. And I said in the preview, if Braun Breaker were to win, it'd be way more impactful if he went out there and beat Sami Zayn in 60 to 90 seconds, opposed to 15 to 20 minutes. So, and it was good. He got tired. He showed it was good. It was just a good match. Very good match overall. I'd probably say like 3.5, maybe even 3 3/4. I just very, very strong. All right. John Cena. It was I would say a secret, out loud secret, so to speak, Greg, that he was in town. And Trish Stratus was your host and said, here's John Cena, pretty much. And he got a thunderous pop. The loudometer went to 110. That thing's so silly, but hey, I get the idea of it, right? And yeah, he pretty much just came out and said, guys, I am retiring in 2025. I am going to be back for the first Monday Night Raw on Netflix, and 2025 is my last WrestleMania in Las Vegas. But that's all he gave us. And then fast forward to the press conference, he said he's going to be back from January to December of 2025 for his farewell tour. I'm not sure if it's like a full-time capacity or if it's going to be spotty, but it seems like he's going to be full-time for WrestleMania season. Richie, you're probably the biggest John Cena fan in this group. What do you think of John Cena retirement tour? Will you see him in a town near you?
If he's in a town near me, I'll definitely consider going to the show, obviously. With John Cena, I got into wrestling in 2003, 2002. So that's when John Cena was on the rise, so to speak. So pretty much his whole career I followed within WWE. It's bittersweet. It's like when you put it like he did like the rally towel, and it's like the time is now for the last time or something like that, to that effect. And it's just like, oof, it's like you don't want it to end, but it's like you realize like he has his Hollywood commitments, and good for him. He's doing the wrestling world justice of coming from WWE into legit Hollywood films and blockbusters. Like some other guy we know. I don't know. I can't think of his name right now. But it's cool that they're giving him like a last story for WWE. I know a lot of people have been disappointed in his showings in the ring over the last couple of years, just because, again, since he's a part of the Hollywood machine, there's a lot of insurance that goes involved with that. And with John Cena also not being in the ring as consistently, he's going to slow down. It was that Kurt Angle effect when Kurt Angle came back to WWE. And a lot of people were disappointed in his run because his body kind of atrophied from. not being in the ring. So with John having a final world tour, so to speak, to end his WWE career, I think it's pretty cool. It's happening on the 20th anniversary of his first WWE Championship win. So I think that's pretty cool in that regard. Who he should face, that is really up in the air. Do you want to hand it to the next generation? Do you want to do a throwback match with somebody like he's faced before, like a Randy Orton? Who knows? Who's to say? Because with John Cena, he's always been the company guy. And what I'm curious is if he is going to have his own creative on it, suggest his own creative, or is it just going to be a WWE story with John Cena as the featured person? So that's the biggest question that I have. But to start off his, I guess, retirement tour in Toronto, and then kind of giving everyone a heads up, it's definitely going to be one of the most well-built stories of next year if they do it right.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential. I hope he's not too involved, because in the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, he's been way too giving with his character, really. He's Teflon, like, so to speak. He's Teflon, but overall, I think he's been extremely too giving, and he doesn't get enough back from a kayfabe winning standpoint, so to speak. Rossi, are you pumped for the Cena Revenge Tour? What do you think will be more high profile? My question to you is his WrestleMania match or his last match?
Probably his last match, and hopefully they have a game plan with that. One thing that I've been kind of disappointed with Cena in regards to his last, maybe 3 years or so, I thought the Roman match at SummerSlam, what was that, in Vegas in 2021?
2021.
Was pretty good. After that, I mean, I don't think Theory benefited from beating him at 39, right? And like Solo at Crown Jewel last year, like, it elevated him, but I feel like he didn't have to win that match to get elevated to this head of the table storyline or whatever they have going with him now, right? So it just kind of feels like the last maybe 2 or 3 years of Cena's spot returns have kind of been not great for the people that he's been putting over in those situations, right? So I'm hoping like I think a match with Orton at Mania might make the most sense, because those guys are forever linked together, and maybe Cena wins that and then ends up losing on the way out. But nothing really screams like must-see match with Cena moving forward. Maybe like he puts Braun over, or he puts Gunther over, or something along those lines. But I feel like those guys aren't going to really benefit from that as much as they would have, 4 or 5 years ago. So I just hope they have a game plan in place that's going to make it all work and benefit the company long term, and not just be like, the Cena flag wave on the door out, Yeah.
Even like a Cody match would be fine, in my opinion, because you have a lot of different options on the table. And that's what one of the best things about WWE creatively right now is they have options, where before it was just one option of where stories can go. But now you have multiple options that you could do. You could do the next big heel. You could do the next big baby face. You could do a rising star. You could be someone that we're not even thinking of. You could have another legend. So there's a lot of different avenues you could go with John Cena and his retirement tour and his last couple matches. And I found it interesting that he said he will appear at the Rumble, Elimination Chamber, and WrestleMania. So it's not really confirmed if he's going to be wrestling on those shows. He's just going to appear as of now. So with WrestleMania being the only, for sure, like, this is the last WrestleMania match that he's going to have. So there's a lot of different things that could happen between then and WrestleMania 41. So I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah, he should probably get tossed from the Rumble by his eventual Mania opponent. I mean, if things can make sense, and that's probably the road to go.
Right. Yeah, I can see it now. I could see him totally I can just see Gunther just beating the shit out of him at WrestleMania, fighting from underneath. And honestly, at this age, he needs that pace. You know what I mean? He's not going to go out there and start flipping around, right? And I don't really think an Orton match would have the juice when the bell rang from a wow standpoint. I think Gunther can get that wow out of him, because he desperately needs that oh shit, like he's still got it type of match if he's going to go on this huge long run. So
yeah,
that's
Braun's
what
risky,
I would do.
right? Like Braun's more risky, where Gunther, will carry him to like 4 at minimum.
Yeah, and Gunther's so charismatic and so magnetic and so engaging, where Cena's pace and Cena can probably still sell like a motherfucker, right? Like just think Umaga beating the shit out of him, right? You Gunther all day, every day, right? That's what I would focus on right now. I would do SummerSlam against Cody in a world title match, and then I'd do Randy Orton at the end of the run. That would be my outlook for Cena. For the 3 big matches right there, including the Rumble, and I don't know, maybe he has to qualify for the Chamber too. So that would be my Cena outlook. I'm probably wrong because I usually am, but that's just off the riff. That's what I would kind of hope and look at. And then I would have like Monday Night Raw matches with Chad Gable, and I would have SmackDown matches with maybe
Carmelo.
Stuff like that. Exactly, right? So that's the stuff I would kind of do. All right. And I would think it'd be cool too. I think it'd be cool if he went on like a tag title run with like Orton or something like that. You know what I mean? Or a protege. He would go on a tag title run with like Cody, but like who's on the rise for Cody, right? Maybe LA Knight or something like that. If he went on a tag title run, I think that'd be cool too as well. So if he's back for like a legit year, like he says, I think it'd be really cool, especially if he's invested. So I'm looking forward to it. All right, this World Heavyweight title match, 14 minutes and 40 seconds. Damian Priest defeats Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre once he cashed in his Money in the Bank to retain the World Heavyweight title. This is a hard one to kind of like look at and take in, right? There was a lot, so to speak. Right off the bat, it reminded me of the Seth and Drew match from WrestleMania 41 to open up night 2. Just because of the pace and the bomb effect. But the bomb effect this time was because they knew Drew McIntyre was coming because, like I said earlier, he called his shot on Monday Night Raw. And the announcer started to allude to it right away and let us know it was happening. So I don't mind these bomb fests. I think Rollins really good at them. You think WrestleMania 35, you think WrestleMania 40. Rollins just seems to be, engaging in the perfect mix of energy and selling to really succeed in these fast-paced bomb fests. But Rossi was just fucking Priest knocked out with that goddamn 3 count before we get into the kerfuffle at the end. Like that couldn't have been booked. Was he legit knocked out? What happened there?
I mean, second straight Priest PLE match where something wacky happens that's probably not his own fault, but it just kind of looks bad on him at the end of the day, right?
Well, it's kind of his fault in a way, unless if he was legit knocked out. What happened? Because he did roll out of the ring, and Drew's music hit instantly right after the non-kick out. So I don't know. I'm not Chris Nowinski, but I think he might have been a little loopy around that one.
Yeah, it was weird. Like just you saying the time of the match being 14 minutes, like it felt longer than that. And especially with these 5-match formats, you would think that we would have a title match that would be longer than 14 minutes, especially with all the cash in of it all and the Punk of it all. But at the end of the day, Priest looked good coming out of it. I mean, obviously we kind of know the end game with this, but you look at this match and you're like, the thing that probably made the most sense coming out of this match was Seth winning and facing Gunther at SummerSlam, which always kind of was a little dubious to me because I didn't think that they were going to have Seth win to just drop it in a month. But it just, now you look at it and it's like, what does Seth do at SummerSlam? If Priest has Gunther, if McIntyre has Punk, is Seth like the referee in that match? Does that become a 3-way?
Yeah, that was my call right
because at the end of the day, it ends up being that he was pissed at Punk about doing it. And like, how does the stipulation work? Like, it became a cash in, so can he really not challenge for Drew's Priest's title again? It was kind of messy in that regard. But at the end of the day, I mean, it looked good for Priest to win this match if he's going to then go ahead and lose to Gunther. But I just hope, and my fear now is that the Judgment Day turn, which is eventually happening, doesn't muddy up the Gunther win at SummerSlam,
Yeah. Richie, a lot and messy, but I think it was by design. Too much in trying to pitch too much into a bag, or what do you say?
The production botch or the kick out mess up, whatever you want to call it, really did kind of take the notch and the wind out of everybody's sails in the match. And I think it's going to be whatever happened within the match with the Punk coming out is going to kind of like overshadow it to a certain degree. I think Priest versus Gunther is the right direction to go. Triple H has been teasing that match ever since last year. They had like a little stare off when Gunther was the Intercontinental Champion and Priest was Money in the Bank. So there was a little bit of a hint and tease there. So I think this was always going to be the plan of Priest eventually dropping the championship to Gunther. And the story of Priest's championship run is that he's getting help, whether he wants it or not, retaining this championship. He just happens to be there, but he wants to prove his own worth as a champion. So I think at SummerSlam, it's going to be a scenario where the Judgment Day are going to try to interfere, but it's like they're not going to attack Gunther. Priest is just going to like order them back, but Priest is going to show fight. He's going to show heart, and Gunther is going to demolish him and take the championship. And that's when you start that babyface turn with Damian Priest, and then you go full tilt that way. Then you have the other side with the Drew McIntyre CM Punk stuff. And again, the cash-in was used effectively for the story. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that because they want to see people who cash in and win championships and possibly elevate more talent. I just think it's just kind of apropos that McIntyre has been frustrated about this briefcase ruining his championship runs. He finally gets the briefcase to reclaim the championship that he lost at Mania, and then bing bada boom, that he doesn't cash in successfully. But now you've successfully interwoven Seth Rollins back in the CM Punk fold. So now what you could do at SummerSlam, you could do a triple threat, and then you still have two more matches, big time matches that you could do later down the line. You could do CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, and you could do CM Punk and Rollins. And you could even do a Rollins and Drew McIntyre match again down the line if you want to, too. So there's a lot of different options coming out of this, triple threat match that just happened. But I think a three-way at SummerSlam might be the way to go because there's no obvious spot for Seth Rollins at this point. You know, they did tease with Seth Rollins facing off against CM Punk to a certain degree, but they've actually successfully, not only kept the focus on Punk and McIntyre, but they've successfully kind of put Seth Rollins in a way that makes sense because now Seth's angry at Punk for costing him the championship. You have McIntyre, who's also at Punk, and then you have Punk, who doesn't like either of these guys. Yeah. So it's like a triple threat that actually makes sense for happening at a big stage with nothing on the line. So I'm a big fan of that.
Rossi, turn up your volume. Thank you, Axel. I don't know. I just feel that we are so deep into this Drew. Not too much. I just feel like we are so deep into this Drew and Punk feud that a triple threat would be a little bit disappointing. It's so personal at this point, and I understand that Seth should have been CM Punk's opponent at WrestleMania. Seth was the initial beef with CM Punk returning, but so was Drew in a way also. But I just feel like Drew has completely stole the shine. I feel like Drew is on top of his game, and I feel like that CM Punk brings out the best and the best attributes in everyone, and everything is so goddamn fucking personal with CM Punk, especially today. Like, his energy and his focus of just ruining that motherfucker's life was fantastic. Even the double wrap of the rope, the ring cables, and him just choking the hell out of him, the mannerisms. It's just, I'm all for it. We're not going to get MJF levels of blood and gore, but they still have that aspect of CM Punk and MJF 8 that was fantastic in 2021, 2022 with Drew McIntyre here. I feel that Seth should be inserted, but I don't think he should be inserted fully yet. I think we should get to the match one-on-one with Seth as like the HBK of it all, referee. And I don't know, it's just so muddy, but it's really not muddy. It's just a clean, beautiful potential feud. And Raw in the fall is going to be fucking absolutely bonkers leading into that.
And you look at this Bad Blood show that they're going to do in Atlanta in early October. I mean, that's pretty much 2 months to the date of SummerSlam. that feels already like Drew and Punk's blow off, right? So if you do a 3-way before that to kind of not completely give away that match, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, it's like, all right, so because they're gonna want to really honestly protect CM Punk. He hasn't had a one-on-one match,
and Drew needs a win too when you think about it.
So you can go out there and you could even in a triple threat, you could have CM Punk get pinned by Drew at SummerSlam, and then Punk's going to get his win back at Berlin, and then you have the blow off at Vlad. That's probably the pace and the cadence there.
I think what you could also do is if you use Seth Rollins, CM Punk, and McIntyre, hypothetically Gunther wins the World Championship, you have Seth win, he goes off with Gunther, then you have Punk and Drew still doing their issue. So then you could successfully get Seth out of there, and you could put apart Seth and Punk for now, and then you just finish up the Punk and Drew storyline at Bad Blood or whatever. So I think that's probably the way they would like to go, because I think they still see that Seth Rollins, CM Punk as the WrestleMania main event for Vegas. Well, night one, at least.
Right, and Gunther's going to need that high-end opponent in Berlin as his first defense, so Seth fits that perfectly. And if he can beat Drew and Punk, and that further makes the Drew Punk feud have heat when neither one could even win their first match together, right? I think that's the right way to go, and I think that's a really good call.
Yeah, the personal issue isn't going to dissipate, so I'm good. I'm just on that personal Drew and Punk boiling point, and yeah, it's interesting that Seth is involved with it, but it doesn't not make sense either. You know what I mean? It's just it's a really good mix so far. You know, kudos to the Raw team right there, and I don't think there's any chance of it getting stale. It is so goddamn hot. All right, Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, Chelsea Green. I watched that. Io Sky, Lila Valkyrie, and Zoe Stark. 16 minutes and 50 seconds in the women's Money in the Bank match. This was more car crash than like excellence that we saw in the men's match. I think Tiffany Stratton was the right winner, even though my heart was with Chelsea. Richie, what say you with the winner?
It's the right call. My fear with Tiffany Stratton coming up to the main roster, I didn't want it to be too much too soon. I was worried that either like winning a championship or being Money in the Bank winner might be a little bit too much too soon. But the thing is, she has been carrying herself like a star since she's been called up to the main roster, and her performances haven't been bad either. So I think she, with her current character, is a perfect fit for the Money in the Bank, and her friendship with the Queen of the Ring winner, Nia Jax, does put a little bit of more intrigue in that as well, because is she going to cash in on Nia Jax, hypothetically, if she wins? So there's a lot of different elements at play with her. I know a lot of people want Chelsea Green to win, but Chelsea Green just hasn't been built up as that person to carry the briefcase as of yet. I still think like she has potential in the future. And honestly, this was a good showcase for all the women involved, with women who aren't as heavily featured on television as usual. You'll see them here or there, but they really did show out, and they did give a reason why women who aren't given the spotlight, when you give them the opportunity and the chance, they can deliver like this. So I think that the women showed out. I think this was probably, if it wasn't match of the night, it was dang close, and I think the women's division for Raw and SmackDown are bright. And this is only a taste, a fraction of what we have on either show. And I just am very excited to see what the women do in the future.
Yeah, Rossi, I know you're pretty high on this match. I'll let you go before I kind of give my overall thoughts. First, Tiffany, the winner. I know your heart was with me with Chelsea.
It was. And I really like how they did the last 5 minutes of this match, because I think everybody that was watching this match knew that it was going to be either Chelsea or Tiff. And the way that those two work together to set up those tables, you're like, all right, they're going to throw somebody through those tables. You're not even thinking about the fact that Chelsea's going to be the one that's going through it. until it happens. And then when it happens, you're like, shit, that makes sense. Right. I'm a little disappointed because obviously I worked myself into a shoot with Chelsea winning this one, because to me it was like, if she's ever going to get that little mini push, now was the time, because she's kind of gotten herself to the point when she's a steadying presence on TV. And like, I feel like she's never going to see herself really in the world title picture if she doesn't have a Money in the Bank to kind of get her there. Right. But at the end of the day, Tiff winning it is probably the better long-term move. I'm a little worried about how quick they get with it. Like, I expect to cash in at SummerSlam because they don't tend to like to have the women carry it, right? But at the end of the day, I don't know if Tiff's 1,000% ready to be at that title holder phase. I kind of look forward to her maybe winning the Rumble and then maybe setting up a match with like a Charlotte or a Rhea or whatever. And that just kind of gives her more time. But at the end of the day, we're talking about this match. I thought the last few minutes of it were electric. I thought the crowd was great. And the way that they did the finish just worked. And as disappointed as I was that it wasn't Chelsea, like, Tiff makes sense, and we'll just see where it goes from here.
See, I can see Tiffany being the outlier and carrying the briefcase for a while. I could just see it all bedazzled and purple and pink and like Tiffany up or whatever. I could just see it being a part of her aura and her gimmick for a very long time. And I think she has to cash in and it work, right? It's just too perfect. So I don't know. I think that Bayley kind of is a lame duck champion in a way, so to speak. And I don't know when the timing is, but I feel like Tiffany should be the timing. I don't really want Nia to win and like Tiffany to like be plucky with the briefcase. I just don't think that dynamic works, even though I think the dynamic with Tiffany and Nia works. Very similar to like how Piper just came up short and it would have worked perfect with Chelsea. Like how Piper is Chelsea's heater. I feel that Nia will transition into Tiffany's heater, so to speak. And I think that their chemistry is natural and it's long lasting. And I don't want the briefcase to kind of get in the way of that. So, and I really don't think that Nia is winning. I think that Triple H is going to kind of keep the belt as long and on Bayley as long as he can, even though it's really not working. Richie, before we kind of veer off, what's your overall thought on Bayley's run? Do you think it's kind of working? Do you think it's lame duckish, like I said, or do you think it's overall fine?
Bayley has the similar problem with Cody. With Cody, you have a bunch of feuds and rivalries that people are looking forward to for the WWE Championship. You have Randy Orton, you have The Rock, and so far you haven't had any of that. So everything people are going to view between then is going to be filler, regardless. On SmackDown, there has been a subtle story being told, similar to Cody and Randy, is with Naomi and Bayley. When they're interacting, you see Bayley either like looking at the women's championship, or when they're hugging, you see Bayley's like hand on the championship itself. So they're building up to something there. And the problem is Bayley hasn't had the proper amount of screen time on the SmackDown television show itself to gain interest in this reign, which is unfortunate because Bayley, in my opinion, is probably the top horsewoman when you go into the all-around category, where she has character, moveset, just personality in general. She can do baby.
I'm reacting very viscerally towards that.
Yeah. Like Charlotte is my favorite out of the four, but I think Bayley as an all-arounder is probably the most solidified as far as just like,
because she's such a mid-carder. She's overall has the best. I get what you're saying.
She's good she's not great at anything in particular. She's just good at everything is my point.
Where Charlotte's excellent at a few things and lacks much more in other things, where Bayley doesn't lack in anything. She's just an 8 across the board, where Charlotte peaks at
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. She's pretty much
I get your sentiment,
but it's just kind of like
got heat with
like it also doesn't help that I don't like her finisher, and I think her theme is not as it suffers from the Deaf Rebel syndrome. I'll say that. But again, with Bayley, it's like you need those interesting challengers, and unfortunately, on the SmackDown side, you haven't had many challengers except for Nia that have been well developed for Bayley to either overcome or face. And Cody had the similar problem, but now we're starting to gain a little bit of more traction with Bayley. The problem is I'm not sure if she's going to get that opportunity to get those challengers in motion. So again, it's one of those things where it's like it's a miss so far, but I'm hoping they could salvage it. But Bayley's just kind of like, she's not going to be the promoted woman. You know, she's not going to be a Charlotte. She's not going to be a Bianca. She's not going to be a Tiffany Stratton.
Yeah.
Bayley she's in that edge role, you know, that Kane, that mankind role, where she's there to maybe hold the championship for a bit, but in essence, she's there to elevate the next person that they're trying to focus on.
Yeah, I like Bayley. It's just not working for me overall. All right, so my thoughts on this match. I thought Tiffany was the correct winner, even though I keep saying our heart was with Chelsea Green. Nailed it that time, Richie. But
yeah, nailed it.
I get
better than Cole did.
Yeah,
Cole got a little excited.
I get the love for this match, but ultimately, I feel that the women kind of have a hard time with these car crashing, structure reliant matches like Hell in the Cell, Elimination Chamber, Money in the Bank, where the men have an advantage of, I don't know, sexist, whatever, being men, being 250 pounds, able to take the brunt that these matches would bring, where Io Sky and Zoe Starks are about $115 and about $130, and for them to be bouncing off ladders and for them to kind of, they just don't have the mass and the structure to take the brutality in these matches. So I feel that the women kind of overall struggle in a whole with these type of structure reliant matches. But overall, they did their job to get us to the climax of the 5 minutes to make this super competitive, super interesting, and really like, ooh, like behind Chelsea. Like, is Chelsea going to do this? And honestly, my MVP earlier was Andrade and Carmelo and Chad. Now it's just Zoe, really. I thought she was the glue here. Io too, in a way. I thought they took and delivered the brutality in this match. And yeah, I overall thought it was good to very good.
Flip side to that, I think I gotta say it, I think Naomi absolutely fucking stunk in this match. I think this entire Naomi run so far has been pretty lame, and she had a pretty good TNA run, so I kind of expected it to be better, but I just thought, I mean, other than like the split ladder thing she did, the rest of it just kind of felt so paint by numbers. And you're right, Zoe was good, Io was excellent. She's probably got the most experience in these matches now. But yeah, the drama at the end is what made this match, because you worked yourself into not knowing which of those two were going to win, so it worked.
I think Lyra was also fine too. Like I think she's been getting opportunities to showcase herself a lot since being called up from NXT, and with Becky out, she's getting a chance to kind of show out and try to be kind of in that babyface woman's position to see if she could be a future challenger to a championship in the future. Though I will like the irony of that the women's Money in the Bank match was sponsored by The Boys. If anybody caught that.
Yeah, I did. But Lyra, to your Lyra point, and me and Ryan talked about it on our preview for this match, like, she's been way better on the main roster than I ever expected her to be. I didn't love her NXT run, but what she's doing now is working, and it might just be a lack of like strong women baby faces in the company, but she's delivering. And you're right. I think she was pretty good in this match, all things considered.
Yeah, she doesn't feel forced. In NXT, she kind of felt forced, right? So.
She was pretty much given that NXT championship, like, kind of right off the bat a little bit. And with the main roster, it's more of a slow burn where it's like we're getting to know her a little bit more. She's in actual feuds before being hot-shotted into the world championship picture. And I think the Damage Control feud with her is probably the perfect position for her for now to kind of flesh out her character and see how the crowd reacts to her. And the crowd has been reacting to her at least like entrance wise in the ring. Like they're responding. So I think it's so far so good, but you still got to kind of build on top of that. So it's kind of like they're doing all the right things. Let's just see how consistent they're going to be with that.
Yeah, I still think Zoe low-key has a chance to be in that upper echelon. Obviously, she's missing something, and it's kind of star power, but I feel like she has a lot of strong attributes, especially in ring. And I don't know, I think that she will eventually kind of get there some way, somehow. She'll just grind her way to the top.
I could have done without the war paint. I thought that was wicked cheesy.
I think
charisma and character.
She was trying.
I think with the teased like partnership with Sonya may help a lot.
Guidance, right?
Because like Sonya is a very good performer when it comes to on-screen presence too, and she's very good in the ring as well, in my opinion. So I think that might be adding another flair to Zoe Stark. But then the problem becomes because Zoe was associated with Trish Stratus before, and when Zoe then broke away from that, she was inserted into another tag team scenario. So it becomes, where is Zoe just a good mechanic, or can we get Zoe Starks over as a persona?
She's probably got to turn on Shayna to like really get to the next level.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a wait and see at this point. I think she has one of the more creative finishers in WWE. So I think if you build off that and you actually like do like a storyline, since WWE is now going there, like I wouldn't say do like a concussion storyline, but just do like that's the most dangerous finish of the women's division, or like whatever, just like give her something that sets her apart from the women's division. Like, why should we care about Zoe Starks as opposed to this person, that person, etc.? Just
it's too bad she's honestly not on SmackDown. She'd be like the perfect opponent for Bayley right now.
I think she gets moved in the next draft.
Yeah, well, yeah. All right. Before we jump to the main event, Brandon wishing us a good evening. Thank you, Brandon.
Good evening, Brandon.
All right. Main event. 6-man tag. The Bloodline. Solo Sikoa, Tamatanga, and Jacob Fatu versus Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton. The Bloodline wins 24 minutes and 40 seconds. Rossi, overall, your thoughts on this match and the outcome of Solo delivering the pinfall on Cody Rhodes?
I thought it was pretty good. I'm not there with Solo. I'm really not. I think that as a presence, he's solid. And I think like his promos are fine enough when he's backed up by 3 butchers behind him, right? But the in-ring just isn't there for me. And yeah, he pinned Cody, but it's just, he's not believable for me in that spot. And I think Jacob in his first like real in-ring work, first of all, anytime him and KO touched was fucking electric, because I feel like those two are like the perfect matchup between two guys that just work a similar style, just brutes. They can do everything.
Looking at each other in the mirror in ring in a way, right?
Right.
It's a lot faster.
But I just feel like every fear that I had about Jacob outshining Solo was there in this match. Tamba looked good. I think Tamba looked pretty good in this match. And I'm glad that Tangaloa wasn't in the match, but he played his role well on the outside too. I mean, the big thing is, obviously, I think people were disappointed with this match because with it being a main event, you were expecting something, whether that was a Jimmy return on a low end, whether that was a Roman return on a high end, which, wasn't really going to happen on the show, but I think people talked themselves into that with the positioning. Mm-hmm. It just kind of, the show just ended, you know what I mean? And it was good for the Bloodline to obviously get that win. But, I think we all see the writing on the wall here that there's going to be a Cody Solo match that Reigns gets involved in at SummerSlam. So it just kind of, it feels a little flat for me with Solo. And again, it's not that I don't believe in Solo as a character. I just think his in-ring, it just isn't where it should be.
Yeah, Richie, what's your overall thoughts on Solo Sikoa?
First things first, I hear a lot of people, it's like, oh, why is Solo talking about wins and losses matter when he's lost 40 straight or something? But it was kind of like, And I'm just kind of like, why are we using live events now to pad out record numbers? You know what I mean? Because they're not,
WWE canon.
you know, that's what I'm saying, you know, and I'm just kind of like, with presentation wise, like, look, when Solo defeated Cena, there was an opportunity there to build off that and actually present Solo in the next level. Unfortunately, when The Rock returned, not saying it was unfortunate that The Rock returned itself, but Solo was hindered by that, presentation wise. You know, that story with Roman kind of took a pause right there. And then after WrestleMania, we had to restart that up. And the story of him accepting more members of the bloodline that the bloodline kind of ostracized is an interesting angle to take, you know, because Solo's willing to do stuff that the old regime of the bloodline wouldn't do. The problem is when you have members that are more interesting than Solo himself as not only a character, but as an in-ring performer, that's where the danger kind of comes in. And it just seems like when Jacob debuted, it really did feel like Jacob did in 5 minutes what Solo has been trying to do for 2-3 months.
Put a real spotlight on
2-3 years.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, you know. And it's just really unfortunate. And with Solo, I think he's fine. I think when they were building the tension between him and Roman, that was good because Solo was really good at just being that stoic guy. But now you're having him almost as like a mob boss kind of leader. And I don't think that's Solo as a character, you know? It just kind of feels a little off or wonky. Like I think with Jacob, why he's overshadowing Solo, not just on the in-ring portion, but the presentation portion, is that he legitimately looks like a scary dude. Like this is like really different from the bloodline. From Solo, he just seems like he's just kind of playing pretend, which I guess is the point of this whole storyline. He's pretending he's the tribal chief. He's pretending he's head of the table. But it was the right call for him to get the pinfall over Cody Rhodes if you want to present him as that leader, as that force, because even though WWE didn't go forward with the Solo or capitalize on Solo's victory over John Cena like they should have, this is the only way to legitimize this bloodline faction as a serious threat. And you do that by pinning the WWE champion in a match like this. And that gives Solo instant credibility and an instant reason as to why he deserves a championship match, even if he doesn't really fit in that mold. Now, there is a story between him and Cody from years past, with Solo being the reason why Cody didn't win the championship. Yep. And there's also like Cody pinning Solo was Solo's first pinfall loss on the main roster as well. So there is a story there between Cody and Solo, but are people going to be interested in it when you have all these new shiny toys of the bloodline that are more interesting than him? That's the big question that people have to answer themselves. Are they going to buy Solo as a credible challenger? In my opinion, I don't think he's there yet. You know, it feels very reminiscent of Roman being in that WrestleMania 31 main event with Brock Lesnar. And I'm not talking about the match itself. I'm talking about the build where people were kind of like kicking and screaming that this was going to be the main event of WrestleMania. And now with Solo, it just kind of feels like he like I could see what you're doing. Like he should be there eventually. I just don't think it's yet.
Yeah. I agree. I've been kind of a detractor of him for a long, long time, especially when people would say that he's like the future of the bloodline. I actually think that it's him as your pretend tribal chief. It's actually low-key a red herring. And the rumors of Hikuleo coming in and the rumors of Sami Zayn being that fourth person for the OG bloodline. No. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Solo was on Roman's side after he fails against Cody, fails against Roman, and the real guy is Fatu. Like they on commentary all along, he's menacing. I can't believe he's allowed in this country. We weren't able to hire him for fucking 10 years. He's such a menace. but now we can hire him. They're putting a spotlight on him. Like they're putting a real spotlight on him when they're like putting a dimming spotlight on Solo and saying he's the pretend, because he honestly is going to be the pretend tribal chief leader in the way, because he ain't there yet. May he get there someday? Perhaps, but they know it's not his game yet. And they at SummerSlam, it's going to be sink or swim. And they put floaty on floaty on floaty on those arms for him hoping to swim. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to fully swim with Cody Rhodes in the main event, so to speak, at SummerSlam. And I think they're going to have to pivot afterwards. And I think there's an out there, because Fatu should and could and might as well be the leader of the bloodline going into the fall, once this Solo storyline and experiment kind of runs its course at the end of the summer here. That's just my guess. I throw these guesses all the way, but I can really see it happening just due to the overall highlight of the commentary of Jacob Fatu, especially from the violence aspect. The whole time this new bloodline is violent, 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 but they double down and triple down on the violence with Jacob Fatu. And like you guys both just said, he's completely outshining Solo in ring, outshine Solo from a character, from a charisma standpoint, from a presence standpoint times 3, even on arrival. Look how Kevin Owens stares at him, right? Kevin Owens never stared at Solo Sikoa like that. No one ever stared at Solo Sikoa like that. So I think that ultimately Solo Sikoa is just that flashy new toy, but the real toy is Jacob Fatu. And I think that they think that too, honestly, just by how they presented him in the first month that he's been around, or honestly the first 2 weeks that he's been around. And they made an extremely big deal with him entering the ring today and touching Randy Orton. When he
I
first
think
they were like, this is a fucking moment. This is a moment with him in the ring. So what do you guys say for Rossi?
I think the thing that I've noticed in the last week or two is whenever the lay or whatever they call it gets put on Solo, it's being done by Fatu, right? It's not being done by Tonga. It's not being done by Loa, whatever. That's important, because the thing is, Solo is mad at Roman and he was mad at Jimmy for losing at WrestleMania. So if he loses at SummerSlam, which obviously he'll do, is that turn going to then happen on him, just like it happened with everybody else? Which honestly, as unhinged as they're presenting Fatu as being, that's perfect, right? Because the thing to think about is, like, everybody's talking about how Roman comes in and he has a match with Fatu. I'm sorry, he has a match with Solo. Do we really want to have 2 or 3 months of pay-per-views of Solo being in this high-end pay-per-view match spot? I don't know that he's there. And that's the thing, is I think Cody's good enough, and obviously I know that Roman's good enough to kind of get him to a certain level, but it's like shining him up to like a 3.5, 3 3/4, right? It's never going to be that super high-end match. And at the end of the day, the thing that I've always noticed is everything that this bloodline does is intricate. There's a reason for it. And I just think the fact that they've continued to show, making sure that Fatu is the one putting the lay on him, there's going to be a moment when he just won't do it and he just puts it on himself. You know what I mean?
Now, Richie, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here of the Adewadu family, but do the Haku side and the Rocky Johnson side come from the same side as the Rikishi and the Sika side come from the other side? And could we be looking at like a collision thing from like a real half and half? Because I know Haku is married in, and I know Rocky Johnson is married in, even though High Chief is the uncle and the cousin is Rikishi and the cousin is Sika of the High Chief. So I think that we are, like, if you look so much in the weeds, if you think of February where they had that big bloodline board up, I think that the Haku and the Fatu side is over here, and the Rikishi and the other side with Sika are over there. So we really could be looking at a fracturing of the real bloodline too, if we look deeply in the weeds.
Yeah, and especially with Rock, always going to be a factor of this bloodline story. Because remember, like, the final boss wasn't even supposed to be a thing, you know. The final boss wasn't supposed to be a thing. If you take the documentary that just dropped at face value, The Rock versus Roman this year at WrestleMania was just going to be the first of many chapters. So there were chapters to the story already in place, but how they're going to switch, time will tell. Now, are we going to have a dissension between Rock and Roman right away? I don't think so. You
I'm
know,
glad
because you have to kind of have, you could drag this out for as long as possible, which is why when people say, oh, it's going to be a bloodline civil war at Survivor Series, War Games, you know, that's easy to point out, but there's still time to build everything out. You know, you could drag the story for as long as possible if you really wanted to go that way. I mean, Solo and Roman don't even need to touch until next year at WrestleMania, if you think about it, for to have their first one-on-one match. The thing is with what's currently going on is Jay's going to do his own thing. I don't think he's going to cross over with SmackDown for a while, or at least with the other people of the Bloodline. You still have to reform that, and that's going to take time. We're not sure what Jimmy is out with because he's been injured for all this time with a legit injury, so we're not sure when he's coming back. And with The Rock, does he associate himself with Jacob Fatu, Tongaloa? Yeah, it would be a pretty interesting thing for The Rock being associated with all these New Japan MLW guys, which I think is pretty funny. But it will also give The Rock new life and new dimension and new interest to a crowd that hasn't even seen The Rock before, you know, in this kind of light, this kind of atmosphere. My only fear is that The Rock would make it a little bit more about himself than the angle itself. And that is my only fear with The Rock in this storyline. Would The Rock make it would The Rock make it interesting? Yes. But would anyone benefit from it? Like I was saying before, when The Rock came back, Solo kind of got hindered in that character department. My fear is that Jacob and the Tonga, Kama, all of them would get kind of like relegated as The Rock's guys as a result. So it's going to be interesting for sure. And then after that, you can like toy with the Roman relationship with Jimmy, with Jay, with everything like that, you know.
Brian Richie's always dropping bars.
Thank you, BC.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's many roads that these guys can go down with this whole bloodline thing, The Rock's involvement, Solo's involvement, so on and so forth. So it's interesting. All right, so in retrospect, say 6 months to 9 months to a year, will we look back and say Solo Sikoa pinned Cody Rhodes in a PLE? Like, what? Will we be saying that? Or is it the right decision? What do you guys think?
I think that it was the right decision if you're going to go to a SummerSlam match. Because I mean, I think that we all would expect Cody to get the W there. I don't expect to be Solo to be the guy that takes the title from him, right? But you know, at the end of the day, it's I think if you look back at it a few years from now and you say, all right, Solo won this match to get to this point, and then Roman came back and fucked them, right? Like that's what I end up seeing as the end of the day here. And how that bleeds into a bloodline split. Obviously, the bloodline split's already there, and we can kind of already see that it's at least 3 versus 4. Then there's Hikuleo, and then whatever Roman gets. Does it become a vengeance for Paul Heyman's story, right? Is that going to be what really brings Roman back? Roman kind of treated Heyman like dirt along the run too. But I mean, it's pretty clear that the world's ready for the Roman Reigns babyface turn or babyface return. Every show they do, the crowd's chanting, "We want Roman, we want Roman." They did tonight, and it was the loudest shit they had.
They did.
Right. So that return's going to be epic whenever it happens. I just hope that they have a nice plan in place because, again, the Solo of it all is what my worry is. I don't. If you told me Reigns and Jacob Fatu were going to have a match at the battle at the Bash in Berlin or whatever they call it, I'm all in. I just don't know if Solo and Roman's a match that I really signed up for, you know?
Yeah. All right. Richie, any final thoughts on this main event here?
Yeah, again, it did its job, you know. It was supposed to solidify the threat of this new bloodline and to solidify Solo as the next challenger. And to do that, you have to go for the head, which is the WWE champion. And Cody can take a loss. You know, I think he's only been beat by Drew, Brock, and Roman, which is not bad company to be in. And with Drew and Brock, it was by like underhanded means to a certain degree.
Yep.
So, like, same thing with Roman. So none of them have been like quote unquote clean. But so you could sell this as like a really big deal. And my only fear with Roman coming back, where does that leave Cody as a hot baby face? You know what I mean? Is he going to be just the guy carrying the championship because Roman's doing this other thing? But I think the positive of it, for at least for Cody, is that Roman's not going to be there every week. You know, he's going to be there a certain amount of time. So I think Cody as the top face on SmackDown isn't going to be hindered that much, but Roman, when he comes back, is going to be on a different stratosphere than the full-time performers that we already have in WWE. And that's just because of the aura that he presents himself, because he isn't a full-time performer anymore. He's now in that Brock Lesnar position, whether people want to admit that or not. And again, dude's earned it. And with this match overall, it's that chapter of the story where it's just kind of like we're in chapter 4 of like a 25-page, 25-chapter book where it's like, all right, nothing much really happened here. We're just establishing our characters right now. And once we get more and more in the middle of the book, then we'll find out like how the story is going to go.
Yeah. Overall, I thought the match did its job. First of all, I thought the quality was there when it needed to be, and when the intensity called for it, it was there, magnified, especially with Jacob Fatu. But for 24 minutes, I thought it kind of reminded me of last year's Money in the Bank match between the Usos and Roman and Solo, where they had that 10 to 12 to 15 minutes of kind of this is an MSG house show from 1983, and we're kind of getting our shit in, brother, and our heat in, and we're settling in. When that's not what the feud called for. The feud called for the velocity and the energy and the action that it would climax at the end, but the structure kind of felt like getting into the heat of it all, just to kind of all right, what are we doing here, guys? I get it, but like, let's ramp this up. I felt that kind of hurt the match a little bit here, but this didn't get to the heights of the Usos and the Bloodline last year at Money in the Bank, where the SummerSlam main event, Jay pinned Roman. Hopefully, we get a stronger result this year with Cody and Solo from a quality standpoint, just to kind of tie that in. But overall, I thought it was a very good main event, and it did its job, and it had its peaks too. All right, so this PLE was what? 3 hours plus. Let's go around the horn here and play prices right. Rossi, starting with you. How many hours and minutes do you feel that we had in-ring action tonight?
Oh man, if they went, I know how these 5-match structures go. It's a lot of Peacock ads, right? So they probably did. I mean, we're talking about 15-minute matches up until the main event. So we were probably bell to bell an hour and a half.
Okay,
Richie, would you like to counter that pitch of an hour?
I was gonna say, like, I was gonna think like hour and a half. I'll go under. I'll go 85 minutes of in-ring action.
All right, so you're gonna make me do math and do an hour, an hour and 25 minutes. All right, that's with a round up. It is an hour and 24 minutes and change. So I round that up to an hour and 25 minutes of in-ring action, or other people would say 85 minutes. So, yeah, for a 3-hour sit down, God, I think the first bell didn't ring till 20 minutes in, but I don't mind the entrances. It's a part of the spectacle. That stuff,
especially with Money in the Bank, right? You got 6 entrances.
That stuff doesn't bother me. You're setting the table, you're presenting it. The shit that bothered me this time was like making me watch this documentary for fucking 5 minutes on a loop, where they're just spewing their bullshit and their propaganda down your throat in a way. And end of the day, come on, we know.
I told you this, Ryan. I was watching on the lag, so I was able to fast forward through all that stuff. So and then I got caught up at the end.
Your perspective is a little different than ours, but I don't mind the zoning out in between matches. I prefer it. You can go to the bathroom, get a drink, get a whatever. I don't mind it. I'm sitting down and watching this PLE for the rest of the night, right? I don't mind it, but when you're making me watch like Bobby Lashley videos and you're making me watch The Rock with his new meme saying, yeah, that's when I told Hulk Hogan to slam Andre the Giant and fucking win at WrestleMania 3. That's the stuff where it's like, all right, enough.
Definitely worth the 3-month wait. I'll tell you that much.
Like, let's be real, guys. We know that the Cody and Triple H played those motherfuckers. I was saying it then that with the Conrads and the LaGrecas and the Johnsons going with the Twitter push that night of fucking we want Cody and Cody got screwed and fuck The Rock. That was, and Triple H telling him that day and Cody pointing at him. Come on, Cody ain't going rogue and pointing at him. Triple H and Cody knew exactly what they were doing all along and it worked. So that's
yeah. It's just like one of those things where it's like where people are like, oh, Cody went off script. I'm like, if he went off script, he would have been fired the moment he got back. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing, is if you're talking about the script that they're saying, they said that it was going to be Punk and Seth and Rock and Reigns. So then why the fuck did Cody win Rumble? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, Triple H, like he said, because like Cody, they didn't want to stall Cody's momentum. Like that was the Triple H reason. You know what I mean? Which again makes sense in theory, because Cody didn't really lose up to that point.
Play the game. The game got played. Triple H doesn't know what he's doing.
Look, it's like if people are gonna be salty about, them playing politics, The Rock, who literally got on the board and then inserted himself into the main event. That's like the biggest political move you can make. So
and they played the next band.
That's what you got to do. If it's like if you're not in tune with what's going on in the world itself, and you think you could just kind of bulldoze your way in, don't be surprised if people aren't going to accept that right away. And the perception is this guy joined the TKO board and then inserted himself in the main event. People aren't going to react to that very well. That's just how the perception was. It doesn't matter if you're The Rock or somebody else. And if they really wanted to actually make it work, they would have just put Rock in the Rumble in the first place. You know what I mean? So it is what it is.
Yeah, so you can date back to Dallas, Texas, where The Rock said, it's not hot enough yet. Like we're still like have pandemic vibes. Like let's not do Dallas. Like I don't want to go to Dallas when I beat Eric Rowan where there was legit like 80,000. We called it 100. I don't want to go there when there's 50,000. We call it 60. Right? Let's go to Las Vegas. Let's go to L.A. L.A. The Vince stuff. He is meddling. Triple H is making the phone calls to get him in. And he is above Triple H. If it's not Vince, fuck you, Triple H. I ain't going in there and you be my boss. The next year, fast forward. All right, now I'm your fucking boss, Triple H. Now Triple H is like, all right, well, I'm not losing my fucking powers to that geek Gerwartz again. Like, fuck this shit. And him and Cody pull it play. That's exactly what happened. No need thinking.
Well, it's like with Rock joining the TKO board. Like that's why he held out, in my opinion. Because it's almost like when Hogan left WCW and then he saw like a ratings bump and it's like, time to come back, brother. And then like he'll take credit for the ratings to come up. WWE was doing very, very well under Triple H, at least creatively. And people were getting like that hot product. And then Rock and a lot of other superstars have the wherewithal to be like, that money train hasn't left the station. I could still kind of hop on and then kind of like not take credit, but take credit. You know what I mean? So it's just like, again, it's the nature of the business, It's like people are going to pick a side regardless and accuse the other side of wrongdoing when both sides are doing the same thing. Like that's how the business is played. It's a chess game at the end of the day.
Yeah. And the thing too is like The Rock is by all intents and purposes the most famous person in the world, right? Like everybody knows who The Rock is. Yeah. He had a pretty rough year and a half, right?
Yeah.
So for him to come in and get a lame duck storyline, like everybody wanted Cody, right? So I understand, like, yeah, there was probably part of him that was like, shit, this isn't going to work for everybody. It's not going to rehabilitate my career. But for a guy as famous as he is to be like that insecure about everything like this, he had to make this documentary stall out for 3 months until it became everything he needed it to be, which for all intents and purposes is a rock fluff piece, right? I did this because this is the best thing for the business. The fuck you did. Like, it was the best thing for you today, you know?
The thing is, like, Brian Gewirtz was asked about it on a Busted Open radio interview. And the thing is, he's like, oh yeah, The Rock's not holding it up. And I'm like, you weren't really prompted, or no one accused The Rock of holding it up. But now that you're saying it, now I'm starting to think that, you know, now my imagination's going a little bit wild. But again, it's one of those things where, you know, the whole timeline, like, legit, like, they heard the reaction on Friday, they changed their minds on Sunday, you know, so it's like the turnaround was very quick. And the thing is, it's like, if you're the most disliked video on YouTube for WWE and you're the biggest star in the world, you know, something tells me you're not as in tune with the people as you portray yourself as. And I think, like, a lot of the after the fact interviews where it's just like the whole documentary, a lot of Rock, some Triple H, a little bit of Cody, legitimately almost no Seth or Roman. So originally this documentary was like 13 minutes, they were saying, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But a lot of it was just kind of like, we're hearing this from The Rock's point of view, which is cool. That's fine. But if you really wanted to make it a fair documentary, you have to go through all sides of the argument to see what's going on. But they're not going to do that because the guy's on the position that he's in.
It kind of made Cody look like a dickhead at the end of the day.
Well, yeah.
And the thing is, they lucked into the fact that The Rock, like, put this final boss character together, which was the best form of The Rock we could have asked for this year, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where it's like they lucked into it and it worked. And I mean, if he, I'm sure for that to work, he had to agree to it. He had to do this and that, the other thing. But I just didn't appreciate the Triple H saying, "Oh yeah, he wasn't supposed to put it Roman." Like, that made Cody look like an idiot. You know what I mean?
There was a lot of things where it was just kind of like you could see it, like the imbalance of how everything was told, because we were all living in it in real time, you know, where it's like you saw a bunch of like streamers, you saw a bunch of YouTubers, like Twitch, TikTokers, whatever, like react so positively to The Rock coming back, as they should. You know, The Rock's back. You didn't see when there's like, oh yeah, there was some criticism. There was a segment of fans that were critical of it. You didn't see any videos of those creators criticizing the decision. You didn't see any of that happen in the documentary. And it just looked like the complaints only came from tweets.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it wasn't fairly balanced, you know, because like we all were there in real time. You know, it wasn't just like, oh, the Cody Crybabies did XYZ, whatever. There were people who aren't even Cody fans knew this guy was getting a raw deal, you know, and to just kind of categorize it as a segment of the audience. You could say it was the majority, you know,
right.
You know what I mean? It was the majority of people that were not happy with this, you know, and The Rock to say, like, first of all, Rock's different than Hogan because people are like comparing the two. I'm like, if this was Hogan, they would have just went straight forward with the Roman match. But at least Rock had enough wherewithal, and The Rock also doesn't really want to be hated, like, for his image, where he's flexible enough to kind of turn the story. The thing is, if you remember the build to that entire WrestleMania, a lot of Rock, little Roman, you got Cody, and then you have a little bit of Seth. So even then, even though The Rock was the quote-unquote favorite heel throughout the whole entire thing, he still dominated the entire build, you know, and the other three were just kind of left with, it's like, okay, we have to wait for The Rock to do his stuff, and then we could kind of like jump in on it. So
which always makes me wonder what would have happened if Punk just won the Rumble, like everybody probably thought was going to happen. Is there a groundswell for Cody at that point? Probably not as much. I think at that point people would have been like, all right, we get Rock and Roman, big fucking deal. You know what I mean?
But it also goes to the point of the popularity Cody actually has, because nobody else could dwarf The Rock in terms of like getting people to turn on him.
Right.
You know,
and I just think that like having him win the Rumble, like ultimately is what led to all of that, because if Punk threw Cody out, all right, cool. It's Punk's year, Cody's next year, or whatever. It's just interesting how it all played out when Cody won the Rumble when there was no match for him. That's the part that it's like, all right, this is where there's obviously no truth in the pudding here. You know what I mean?
All right, we have gone off the rails here. As we get out of here, out of 10, Money in the Bank 2024. Richie, to you first.
I say 7. You know, It was a fine show. You know, nothing wrong. Like, I think the low point was probably the Damian Priest kick out thing. You know, that was probably the low point. Other than that, nothing was like inherently bad. You know, thankfully, everybody in the ladder match seems to be okay. Basically, everything like that happened match wise did its job. You know, did its job well. So they clocked in, they clocked out. Like, did I think this was like a strong, like they call it like a big 5 pay-per-view? Not necessarily, you know. I think it was just fine for what it was. Nothing offensive, but you know, it did its job.
Yeah, I was on the fence at 7.5. Rossi, what say you?
Yeah, I was thinking 7 right off the bat, because to me, while it doesn't have a lot of like, you've got to go out of your way to see this show type of feel to it, they did a really good job of setting up SummerSlam, in my opinion, with it. Every single match ending had something that makes you want to watch TV this week to see what's next, right? From the Drew Punk stuff to the fact that Logan Paul didn't get involved, which I thought was kind of interesting as well.
No one got involved in the Bank match.
Which everybody was expecting. Oh, the Wyatts, Logan Paul, Punk's going to get involved. Like, I'm glad that they didn't muddy it up with that.
Yeah.
But you know, how's Tiff going to be with the briefcase? What's going to happen with Sammy and Braun? What's going to happen with the Bloodline and Cody now? It's all like intriguing future TV. So it wasn't a miss at all for me. So I think 7's a good number. It just is. It doesn't get above that number because I don't think that I could tell a casual, "Hey, go watch this show and you'll really love it." You know.
They'd probably like the car crash of the Money in the Bank aspect of it. So I'll probably go 7.5, even though I probably sounded less higher on the overall pay-per-view as you, as we've been here for an hour and 20 minutes or whatever. So, all right, that is the NoSo Post Show, Money in the Bank 2024 edition. We may pop in after random Raws, random NXTs, random whatever, but most likely after random WWE pay-per-view. So, NoSo Post Show, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.